Good morning. We have some important but brief war updates for you on today's video. We will be covering some developments in Venezuela, Ukraine, and more. If you enjoy the content in this video, please hit the like button and subscribe. As well as don't forget to hit the notification bell so we can continue to provide you with war news briefs daily. Now let's get into today's briefs. So we're going to start off in Mississippi. There was 4 individuals that were killed in a mass shooting following a Mississippi football game. That's as much information as I've been able to gather at this moment in time. But I did want to report on that domestic incident. So moving on to New York at the United Nations headquarters. Venezuela has requested an urgent meeting of the United Nations Security Council to address concerns regarding potential U.S. military escalation in the Caribbean. This initiative, supported by China and Russia, follows warnings of a possible U.S. strike in the near future. Firm reports of heavy military movements in Venezuela. I know that sounds rather vague. I tried to get more concrete information, but I was not able to obtain anything that I felt confident in reporting. So I don't know if the heavy military movements is coming from the Venezuela side or if there is something brewing with the U.S. military, possibly with special forces. I simply just don't know. But once I have more information on that, I will let you know in the next war brief. Upcoming channel changes and updates. Here is what you need to know. Changes are going to be made to our structure. I'm moving away from doing so many shorts and doing 1 to 2 regular, longer war brief videos a day. And my goal is to premiere these consistently at 5 p.m. Mountain Standard Time. Now, when you hear me say the word 1 or 2 videos a day, if news requires me to do a secondary video, I will. And that'll generally be the following morning, so that then there's plenty of space to report and make it of value to you, but as well as not interfere with the regularly scheduled 5 p.m. broadcast. The goal really is simple. It's to provide better writing, less notifications for you, and the goal of better quality content. And I also, more importantly, want to say thank you to all the new subscribers. Now let's continue. So back to Venezuela, more notably the coastal range. So the Venezuelan military has advised citizens to anticipate deployments to key coastal areas and request that the public refrain from recording military activities. Sounds to me as if the Venezuelan military, is strategically doing things along the coast to protect their country, as well as I think it's just asking citizens to focus more on their own personal safety instead of making whatever it is that the Venezuela government is ultimately doing with its military. They want to try to keep it under wraps as best as they can. U.S. Navy vessels as close as, a couple of kilometers off of the coast, as well as some engagement with Trinidad, as well as there's been a request made by the U.S. military to the Grenada, its land, for radar and other strategic initiatives. So, that's sort of a wrap right now with Venezuela. But there's a lot going on, I have no doubt, underneath the scene, and I'm really at a level where it's pretty clear that we are going to be doing some type of military operation very shortly in Venezuela. U.S. is making it very obvious with their presence in Puerto Rico and in the coast, and this isn't just about narco boats. There's just too much of a military presence. Estonia. So Estonia is temporarily closed I'm going to try to say this correctly, Siatsi border crossing due to increased Russian military activity in the vicinity. And this has been reported by the Estonia Public Broadcaster, ERR, and it came out on October the 10th. Now, let's move on to Moscow. We have quite a bit of content to talk about with Ukraine and Russia today. So, analysis suggests President Putin is currently confronted with significant strategic challenges. Reports are indicated that ongoing conflict with Ukraine is resulting in economic setbacks for Russia, most notably around fuel. And, the detriment of its economy and the businesses. It's taken quite of a hit, and I think, I've reported enough of that in recent memory. For Russia, the country's summer offensive campaign has not achieved its objectives. Russian casualties reportedly number between 800 to 1,000 daily, without any real substantial breakthroughs against Ukrainian defenses. In response to internal crisis and disruptions to the oil infrastructure, there are concerns that President Putin may consider escalating military action, potentially targeting NATO members. Parallels have been drawn to World War I, where sustained conflict led to domestic instability. Ukrainian drone operations are causing considerable damage to Russian oil refineries, really pushing Moscow to seek fuel imports from China, North Korea, and Belarus. Ukraine. Russia launched a large-scale strike targeting Ukraine's energy grid, deploying more than 78 attacks and decoy drones alongside at least 30 missiles, including 14 ballistic Iskander MKN-23 types. These attacks targeted power and water infrastructure across multiple regions, including Kiev, Odessa, Zaporizhzhia, and eastern Ukraine, resulting in widespread blackouts. In Odessa, large parts of the southern region were left without power as of Saturday morning. Although Ukrainian air defenses intercepted many threats, the interception rate for drones was below average. And speaking of below average, it seems like at the beginning of the war, Ukraine's air defenses probably were in a range of about 76% success rate. But it seems as of late, Russia appears to be using some type of ballistic missiles, or has done something with those ballistic missiles that's really improving the success rate dramatically. Now, what are the emergency responses, and what are updates to the continued blackouts? Well, emergency crews successfully restored electricity to over 800,000 residences in Kiev by the following morning, which was really yesterday morning. Though outages continued in Odessa and several other areas. The attacks are part of an ongoing Russia campaign intended to cripple Ukraine's energy grid ahead of the winter months. Both ground and air activity remained elevated, with equipment losses above average, and Russian multiple launch rocket systems and airstrikes were below average, and only one Ukrainian strike on ground targets was reported during this period. Now, what have the casualties been in the past 24 hours? Well, there was 5 deaths and 17 injuries across Ukraine, including a 7-year-old boy in Zaporizhzhia. The strikes have intensified fears of a harsh winter without reliable power, leading to further displacement and straining the humanitarian aid efforts when needed. Really, there's no specific overnight casualties have been reported on the Russian side following last night's Ukrainian strike. In retaliation for a lot of the infrastructure strikes, Ukraine launched a significant drone offensive deep into the Russian territory, targeting a refinery in the Siberian city of Tyumen, which is 2,000 kilometers from the border. This represents one of the longest range attacks since the beginning of the invasion. Russia claimed to have downed 42 Ukrainian UAVs into its territory overnight. On to Belarus. So the Belarusian Ministry of Defense has announced that its armed forces have been placed on full combat readiness. Now let's talk a little bit more and update you on Thailand, because there's, the skirmishes and there's been some developments in this area of the war. So, border tensions continue between Thailand and Cambodia. So, escalating tensions at the Sai-Kao border have led to deployments of riot police to the flashpoint areas. Cambodian nationals are facing eviction from disputed territories, which has resulted in crowd formations and increased risk of confrontation. Reports between October 7th and October 9th indicate heightened armed conflict, including military strikes and violence along the border. So on the evening of October 11th, Thai forces allegedly used loudspeakers to broadcast unsettling sounds, including ghostly wails, barking dogs, and aircraft noises, into Cambodian villages near Chok Che. These actions have been described as deliberate harassment and psychological warfare targeting civilian populations. Now, diplomatic exchanges. Thailand has rebutted Cambodia's claims at the United Nations as of October the 10th, strongly asserting sovereignty over the disputed border villages. The officials have emphasized that Cambodia's cooperation is essential for de-escalation and have downplayed further mediation offers from former U.S. President Trump. Separately, China has refuted reports questioning its neutral stance, reaffirming its ongoing defense cooperation with ASEAN members. So, what are the casualties? Well, the conflict so far has resulted in significant losses on both sides. The Thai side reports at least 16 soldiers and 14 civilians killed, with 14 soldiers and 32 civilians injured. Over 5 intense days of clashes earlier in October, at least 38 people have been killed and more than 300,000 residents have been displaced across both countries. Pakistan. Skirmishes between Afghanistan and Pakistan have risen the past few days. So, making a special mention on today's report, cities in Afghanistan have been hit by Pakistan, and really most notably the capital of Kabul. The reason for this happening appear to be sketchy, with general reports of Pakistan not happy with the government of Afghanistan at the present moment. As well as, if you kind of go back before all these skirmishes along the border of Pakistan and Afghanistan started, if you recall back to the UNGA, India had talked to its position versus Pakistan and the problems that it had, as well as Pakistan having its issues with the water situation versus India. So there's got to be some common denominators with all of that now, including Afghanistan. So it'll be interesting to see how this conflict unfolds and ultimately what Pakistan's objectives are as they become more public and I am able to report on what it is that Pakistan is ultimately trying to do. And that's all the news we have for today. Thanks for watching.